Thank you for tuning in and checking out Unlucky, a memoir. My name is Kat. Everyone has a story. This one just happens to be mine. So I left off last week coming out of the hospital after I had an abscess in my L4, L5 that could have taken my life. And yet still that wasn't enough to get me to stop getting high and using and sacrificing any good that was left in my life. I returned back to the squat, living on the love seat. And in my absence over the 3 months, other people had started crashing there. I had my wallet there, and there was nothing in it but some sentimental stuff that somebody decided they needed more than I did. Pictures of my son, recovery coin that my sponsor had given me, and just other things that were irreplaceable. And that should have been enough to tell me that this isn't where I was supposed to be, but it wasn't. I continued leading the life that I had been leading. And after a few months, I started getting a pain in my chest where the infection, one of the infections was. I had the abscess in my back, an infection in my sternocleidomastoid joint. And I, of course, ignored it, hoping it would go away. Got some antibiotics from one of the neighbors, took those, and it continually just kept getting worse. So finally, I called a friend of mine and had him pick me up and take me to the hospital. And again, upon checking into the hospital, I think I took them, they were taken aback a little bit because I was completely honest about my use and my addiction. And it's one thing I can say, if you're in active addiction, especially opiate addiction, be honest on your intake. They're still going to help you and take care of you. But now they know how to adjust the pain medication and other meds to accommodate your addiction. So they checked me in. They took an MRI of my chest and realized that the infection was in there again. And the way the doctor explained it to me was there's not a lot of blood flow that happens in the sternocleidomastoid joint. So it's hard to really get the infection out. So once again, I was hooked up to IV antibiotics and given pain medication on a regular basis. And the decision was finally made that they were going to have to perform surgery. And that surgery entailed cutting me open, or I think it was this way, flapping the skin, and they flapped the muscle underneath. What they had to do was get in there, and they cut about an inch off of my clavicle and a chunk out of my sternum. And to this day, there's still a hole. Like I can feel the hole where the surgery was. And they ended up having to leave that wound open. It was about 10 days, I believe, with a wound vac on it, where they continually had to come in, excise the area from the previous adhesive and the med vac that was adhered to my chest, the wound vac, and clean it out, which was not fun. In that time, I convinced friends of mine to bring drugs to the hospital, and I was back to my old habits of stealing the extra medication that was left in my room. Because what they would do is they would come in to give me my pain meds, intravenous pain medication, and then they'd take the vial and throw it in the sharps container, and it always had a little bit left in it. So I devised a stick with some tape on it to fish those out. I had the medical syringe hooked up to the IV. And this is probably when the first doubts of wanting to live started creeping in, because I remembered saving up as much as I could, including they were giving me oxys, I believe, during the day, along with IV opiates to try to combat the pain of the open wound. And I would fight the pain and save as much as I could in hopes that maybe it'd be enough to end my life that evening. And it never was. I continued this until finally they sealed the wound up, and I was just about good to go. I just had a little rehab in the hospital before I left, physical rehab. Um, Again, this was another 3-month journey in the hospital in under a year. And these infections easily could have taken me out. They could have spread. They could have gotten worse. And this trip to the hospital was a little different. This was in 2021, October, November, December, January, end of October and the beginning of January. And in that time, while I was in the hospital, it was in December, I started getting a lot of messages on Facebook and to my phone from people either I didn't recognize or hadn't talked to in a long, long time. Finally, I relented and messaged someone back, and they said, you need to call your son's mother. You need to call your ex right away. And being in the depths of my addiction and not really wanting to cope with life, I didn't want to. Then finally, the friend who dropped me off at the hospital, who's a mutual friend of me and my son's mother, he called and he told me I needed to call her. And he wouldn't tell me what it was, but part of me already knew what had happened. I don't know how, but part of me already knew what it was. So finally, I relented and made the phone call. And when she answered the phone and realized it was me, she told me she had some very bad news that was probably going to upset me. And immediately I knew what it was. I wasn't worried that it was something with my son. I wasn't worried about anything. I knew what it was. And she told me, she said, I'm sorry to tell you, but your father's dead. There's more to that story that I'll talk about in another video, I'm sure. But we were estranged at the time. He definitely probably didn't have good feelings towards me at the time. And I found out he went into the hospital on a Monday with COVID and was gone by Thursday. His system started shutting down and he was gone. And strangely enough, he was actually in the same hospital that I was, about 2 floors beneath me, when he passed. And there was nothing I could do at this point. The hospital could not tell me because it would violate confidentiality and hospital procedure. Even when I asked after I found out, they couldn't verify. So at this point, I was so numb from the drugs and everything else that had been going on in my life, so callous to the world, that I was kind of surprised that I wasn't more upset. I was kind of more in shock. Didn't know what or how to feel or why I wasn't feeling. but I realized that things had to get done. I found out that my stepmother had had him cremated and there was no service. So I took it upon myself while laying in my hospital bed to write up an obituary and post it online, because I knew he had so many people who cared about him, knew him, who he left a mark in their lives that they would want to know. And I was right. As soon as I put the obituary up, it started getting hits of condolences and people in shock that they had just seen him. But somehow I managed to get that done because I didn't think anybody else was going to. So that was a few weeks before I was released from the hospital. And again, I convinced them not to take me off of opiate pain medication, that I'd manage it myself. And they relented and allowed me to leave. Not to say they didn't do their best to try to sway me and have people come in and talk to me about addiction, but I've been pretty well versed on addiction and recovery and every aspect where they ended up relenting and I guess respecting my wishes, because I don't know if they had too much of a choice. So after I healed up, I got picked up, taken back. Or no, actually, they got me an Uber and taken back to that apartment. And now there's even more unsavory characters. There's a person, one or two people sleeping on the floor, somebody sleeping in the recliner, and well, one of them was sleeping on the love seat, but they gave it back because the person who had the apartment told them it was my spot. But things went downhill quickly in that apartment. But that's not the story for today. I'm still not sure if I've processed completely the death of my father. I understand he's gone, but I still have this weird feeling like nothing, like something as serious as that happened didn't really happen. I should have more emotion pertaining to it and have more feelings around it. And who knows? Maybe this is me processed. I don't know. And maybe one day it hits me like a ton of bricks and I break down and finally deal with it. I couldn't tell you. All I know is I continue to move forward and continue to be the best person I can be. And that's just being a little bit better than I was yesterday. And the life I have today wasn't even a dream, wasn't a speck on the horizon. Part of me wishes he was still here so he could see what I've accomplished. But my faith tells me he does see. With that, I'd like to thank you all for coming on this journey with me and following along every week. I truly, truly am grateful and appreciate each and every one of you who click on these videos. With that, I'll see you all next week.